Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and we got a very special guest with us today to give us really an update on something that I think could be really beneficial to some of you. Sunny Milton's with us today. She's the volunteer coordinator for the Pregnancy Center here in Medford, talking about a very special Bible study class coming up next week.
This week? Well, yes, next week. Yes.
Next week, right. January 8th. All right. Well, first of all, thanks. Nice to see you in.
Thank you.
And this is something you have been involved in for quite a while, and it's a Forgiven and Set Free class, right?
Yes. It's an 11-week Bible study for women who have had an abortion in the past.
Okay. So, it's well, let me ask you this, Sonny. Some would say, and of course the secular media would say, there's no such thing as post-abortion syndrome.
I'd say that's completely wrong.
Okay.
Every woman I've ever come in contact with has had some reaction of remorse and guilt and shame. And it doesn't matter if they're Christian or non-Christian, it's there. And it's something they can't quite get rid of. You know, and I think it's because it's always been stuffed under the rug. It hasn't been brought out in the open, and things that are kept in the dark like that have a tendency to fester and get worse. And I think, especially for Christian women, I think they are missing out on really understanding the forgiveness of God, and they just they can understand it intellectually. You know, that yes, they know, they read the Bible, they know that God forgives when you ask, but they haven't ever felt it in their heart.
Okay.
And I think that's a big deal, and I think that causes a separation between God and the Christian woman. Okay.
Now, who should take this class?
I think everyone who's ever had an abortion, unless they've had a class similar to this.
Right.
Because the problem is that in our society, women who have had an abortion aren't given the opportunity to grieve their loss. And I think a lot of it is because people say, well, you did it, you know, why would you grieve something you've chosen to do? And I think a lot of times women don't understand what they're doing or have done until after it's over. And then they're left with that horrible guilt. And I think this is an opportunity for them to actually grieve, to actually mourn their lost child, and it's a process that we go throughout that Bible study, and it's very in depth. There's a lot of homework with it, and so the women are just bathed in the Word of God, and I think that is where the healing comes from.
Well, I've had some testimonies of people who have taken the class, and it's quite releasing,
yes,
life-changing, and people have told me in the past that unless this is dealt with, it does show up later on in life in various issues, emotional issues and everything else, even maybe physical issues.
Yeah, it can be. All kinds of things are related to it, you know, from drug use to anorexia to depression. I mean, all kinds of things, because those things are self-destructive, and I think the woman it's a form of self-hate, you know, and they don't really know what's happening, and I think it's because they have this underlying guilt and anger, sometimes anger at themselves, sometimes anger at other people involved, and they haven't dealt with that. And so, you know, anytime you allow anger to fester in your life, it's going to cause a root of bitterness. It's going to cause separation from God, from other people in your life. You know, so sometimes it's very hard for them to develop relationships, even with a husband. So it's very...
Do men take the class?
There is a class for men. We have never offered it. We haven't seen the need. People haven't asked. But I think, just in my case, I know that the father of my aborted child really suffered afterwards. And I don't think he realized he would either. You know, it's something you don't know it's going to happen because people don't talk about it.
Right.
Especially 30 years ago when I had my abortion, it was before I was a Christian, but I still knew. I knew as soon as it happened that it was terribly wrong. And so I was filled with all this guilt and remorse, and I didn't have anywhere to go with it. I mean, I hadn't, because it was kept a secret. Very few people knew. I didn't go to my family. I didn't trust them, and I was too ashamed to go to my family, even my sister, who I'm really close to. I was too ashamed. And I think that's what isolates women, is their shame.
Now, as a facilitator of this, you probably have seen some pretty remarkable breakthroughs.
I have. Every time I've done the class, it's farther in, almost when you're done, you're getting to the end, and one time the women walk through the door, and there's this glow about them. Mm-hmm. And this last time I just taught it in the fall, and I talked for about 5 minutes with this woman, and I looked at her and I said, something has changed. You're different today than you were last week. And she said, yeah. And the other we always have 2 facilitators, and the other facilitator was there, and I said, do you see it? And she goes, yep, I see it too. And she did. She talked about how she truly had received God's forgiveness for the very first time.
How did you receive it?
When I took the class, I thought I had dealt with it all. I thought that when I became a Christian, that it was a done deal. And then I took the class. And part of it is, it's not a requirement, but it's highly suggested. Anybody who volunteers at the center that's had an abortion, take this class. And so I took it, just because, I was supposed to. And then when I got into it, I realized, I haven't dealt with a whole lot of things. The disappointment in myself that I didn't have the courage to carry that child, even if I wasn't able to keep that child. I could have given it to a couple that wanted a child. And so it's so rare that people do adoptions anymore. I've had maybe 2 clients come through the center while I've been there that wanted to do adoption. So it's rare. And but with me, I got to that place in the study, and I finally dealt with the anger of people I hadn't realized I was angry with, especially towards myself.
Really?
And I think that's where it breaks down, is that you don't accept God's forgiveness.
Were you prepared for all the other issues that you didn't think about? In other words, I could have given the baby up for adoption.
I hadn't even thought of it that much.
See, yeah. So the class brings that part of it out.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did that increase your anger for a little bit?
It did. Because I thought, why didn't you do the right thing, but then, you have to let it go. It gets to a point where you just say, okay, God, this one's yours too.
Yeah.
I give up. I'll let you do it. And so let him handle it.
All right. Now, part of that is a memorial service.
Yes.
Describe that. What happens there?
We usually keep that sort of hush-hush, but I think the more that people know about what the class is about, I think the more they'll come.
Okay.
And it starts, as I said before, it's an 11-week Bible study, and it starts out where a chapter on understanding why you need healing, and then another chapter on the character of God. And I think that's essential because people really see that He is a faithful God, He is a merciful God, He is a forgiving God, a loving God. And then it goes through the grieving process, and because women haven't gone through it. They haven't understood what they've felt. They may have gone through it emotionally or physically, but not understood what was happening to them. And so they go through anger and denial and relief, and then they have depression, and then they feel forgiveness, and finally acceptance. And so when you get to that acceptance place, then we prepare for the memorial. And the women name their children.
Really?
If they've had more than one abortion, they name each one.
Now, they hadn't even thought about doing that before.
No, why would you? I have never met a woman who has had a name for their aborted child, ever, until they take the class, and then they have the opportunity to do that.
Wow.
And that's huge. If you had lost a child by miscarriage, you would probably have named that child. Most people, I think, do, and have some kind of memorial. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Depends maybe how far along they were in the pregnancy. But I think it's important, even for a miscarriage, that you name the child and grieve, openly grieve about it, not hiding it in the closet. And I think that's really important. And so what we do at the memorial is each woman lights a candle. They light the candle that represents Jesus, and then lights the candle that represents their child. And then they take, they say whatever they've prepared. Sometimes it's a poem, sometimes it's a letter to their child. And then they pick up a white rose representing their child and put it in a basket handing it over to Jesus. And then let it go.
I can't even imagine that.
It's pretty powerful.
And where does that come in the class at the end?
It's the very end.
Very end.
The very end. And then we sometimes have a pastor there. We usually have music, and then we have communion. And it's a powerful evening.
Wow.
It's powerful.
All right, maybe you need to take this class, or you know someone that needs to take this class. What should they do, Sunny?
They should call the Pregnancy Center,
Okay.
772-1921. And then we, especially today or Monday, that would be awesome. Then we can set them up for a pre-interview before the class starts on Wednesday.
Okay.
So that would be really good.
All right, 772-1921 is the number, and if you know somebody or you yourself, and if you know somebody, you may want to gently encourage them to can they call you in advance and talk to you about it, or
Sure.
what do they do?
Sure.
Just call the Pregnancy Center there.
Yep, catch me at the Pregnancy Center. I'll be happy to talk with anyone.
All right, 772-1921. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Before I go, can I put in a plug for volunteers?
Sure, yeah.
We're in great need for volunteers for receptionists or mentors, and we do a training, and we're doing our next training in January,
Okay.
14th, 16th, 21st, 23rd, 12:30 to 3, and it's really awesome. We need volunteers desperately.
All right, so if maybe you're feeling the tug of the Lord to help over there at the Pregnancy Center, give them a call there too, 772-1921. And again, the class starts, Forgiven and Set Free starts on January 8th, but you need to register in advance. So call right away, 772-1921. Thanks, Sonny, for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.